Let's now discuss a few artificial lights that we have inside Unreal. I'm gonna split this window, and as you can see, right now our scene is perhaps a little bit too bright and the exposure is a little bit too much. So why is that? Because in the camera, you can see we don't have that much exposure as compared to the scene. That is because in the last lesson, we adjusted the exposure inside this camera, okay? So that is why it only has an impact on the camera and not the rest of the scene. If you remember in the last lesson, to light up the night scene, we brought down the value of the exposure in the camera there, okay? You can see beforehand it was somewhere around 0 or 1, but to create the night scene, we brought down the exposure value. But as you can see, it only affects the camera and not the rest of the scene. That is because we are adjusting the exposure inside the camera, okay? In order to adjust the exposure for the entire scene, we're gonna have to bring in a post-process volume. So for that, I'm gonna go into this get content button and simply bring in a post-process volume from here. I'm gonna bring this into the scene and it looks something like this. I'm gonna search for infinite extend unbound. I'm gonna check this box. And when you check this box, what's going to happen is anything that you adjust inside this post-process volume, it's going to have a global impact. For example, if we change the exposure, it's going to change the exposure of the entire scene. But if I uncheck this box and then change the exposure, then it's not going to have the effect on the entire scene, but only within the bounds of this cube. You can, of course, resize this cube to whatever you want, but a much efficient way is to simply just check this box and then you can adjust any parameter you want, okay? I'm gonna just reset the location and scale as well. And let's search for exposure. I'm gonna check these two boxes and let's see what exposure do we have for this shot. It is -2. So I'm gonna now select this post-process volume and type in -2. And boom. Now you can see we have the same exposure in the scene, just like we have in the camera. So one more thing that I like to mention in here is that if you want to adjust the exposure anywhere down the road, you're going to still adjust the exposure within the cine camera actor, not the post-process volume. That is because when you check these two boxes inside the cine camera actor, it's going to override these two elements of the post-process volume. Okay. If I, uncheck these two boxes in here and then adjust the exposure from here, then it's going to have an effect on the camera and on the scene as well. But if I select this cine camera actor and check these two boxes, now it's going to override whatever we have in the post-process volume. Whatever value that we have set for these two elements inside the post-process volume, it's going to now override that setting in the camera. So if you want to adjust your exposure down the road, you're going to still adjust the exposure within this camera, not the post-process volume. So I'm just gonna keep this at -2 so that I have the same exposure in the camera and in the scene as well. Now that we have the same exposure on both of them, let's now discuss a few artificial lights. I'm gonna enlarge this window and let's go, let me remove this one. So in order to bring in some artificial lights, I'm gonna go into get content and in here, you can see under this lights option, we have some artificial lights like this point light, spotlight, and rectangle light. Okay. First up, let's bring in a spotlight in the scene. I'm going to drag this and bring it into the scene. I'm going to move this thing up, and in here, if I increase the intensity to maybe, let's say, 500, you can now see that we have this point light. Come on. I'm going to press F to focus. There we go. You can now see that we have this really good looking point light in the scene. Let me bring it just about there. So let's discuss a few settings. First up, we have the intensity, pretty self-explanatory. Down here, we have the light color. You can adjust the color of your light to whatever you want. And in here, we have the attenuation radius. Okay. Attenuation radius is actually the bounds of that point light. For example, if you want your point light to have an effect within very specific sort of bounds, you can bring down the attenuation radius and you can now see that we only have the effect of this point light within these bounds. For example, if you want to have the effect of your point light to be somewhere around here, You can then increase the attenuation radius. Okay. So next up in here, we have the source radius. Let me move just about there. And just like the directional light, if I increase the source radius in here, you're going to see that we have much softer shadows for whatever we're going to have in the scene. You can see in here as well, but if I bring down this number, now we have some very hard shadows. Okay. The other settings are pretty self-explanatory and pretty much the same like the directional light. So generally, I like to use the point lights in some very specific areas. For example, if you want to add just a little bit of light, just a little bit of illumination inside the spaceship, you can do that with the help of point lights. Let me delete this light and let's bring in a new one. I'm gonna go into lights and bring in this point light into the scene. I'm gonna bring this thing up and let me adjust the position. Maybe I should bring this thing up on Z and bring it just about there. Let me split this window and I'm going to increase the intensity to, let's say, 500. Maybe bring this thing just about there. Let's see. Perhaps just about there. And maybe 1000. Interesting. Let's try 3000. Yeah, now I think it looks a little bit better. Maybe somewhere around here. I think I should also increase the attenuation radius as well. Maybe just about there will look good. Yeah, I think it looks good. Perhaps the intensity is a bit too much, so let's bring this down to maybe 1000. Yeah, I think it looks good. I'm gonna save everything and let's see how this looks like with the animation. If I hide this point light, you can see that before this point light, the interior of the spaceship looks pretty dark. But if I enable this point light, you can now see that we have some really interesting stuff going on inside the spaceship. Okay. So this is how you can use point light in some situations. I use point lights for the night scenes all the time. So if that's what you want with your scene, you can do that as well. So I duplicated this point light because I want some sort of light in here as well. I'm going to split this window and let's see how this looks like right now. Maybe I should increase the attenuation radius. And maybe perhaps bring this thing up on Z. I'm going to have to increase the intensity to, let's say, 3000. The attenuation radius is perhaps a little bit too much. Maybe just about there will look good. Let's try 10,000. And I don't really see much of an effect right now, so maybe I should bring this thing down. Maybe increase this to 10,000. Yeah, I think now it looks good. Oops. Okay. Let's move the playhead here. I'm going to select the point light once again and maybe just bring this thing somewhere around here. Or maybe a little bit in the front as well. Yeah, maybe just about there. Let's see how this looks like without the point light. As you can see, it looks pretty good, but just maybe I should um I think I should really just middle this, perhaps a little bit right here. Yeah, I think it looks good. Okay. Yeah. So this is how you can use point lights to light up different assets or different areas of your scene. Next up, let's discuss the rectangular lights. Let me just move somewhere around here. I'm gonna go back into get content and let's bring in a rectangular light. I'm gonna bring this thing up on Z. Let me enlarge this window and let me increase the intensity. I'm gonna rotate this thing on Y. And this is what a rectangular light looks like. Let me increase you can adjust the width, you can adjust the width and the height as well. And um, let me increase this to 500 to show you the difference. Okay. You can see that it has some very soft shadows, but if I decrease the source width and height, you can now see that we have some comparatively hard shadows in here. So you can control the hardness or softness of the shadows by increasing the size of the rectangular light. Okay. So let's bring this light just about there. And I'm going to increase the attenuation radius, of course. Maybe perhaps a little bit more. And then I'm going to rotate this thing like so. I'm going to change the orientation to local. And move this thing up. Bring it just about there. Rotate it like so. Bring it maybe just about there and increase the source width to, let's say, 10,000. Sorry, not the width, the height. And maybe the width to 5,000. Let's see. Maybe I should increase the intensity to, let's say, 10,000. Yeah, I think now it looks a little bit better. I'm going to split this window and let's see how this looks like in our shot. I'm going to hide the rectangular light, and right now we don't have much of an effect, but let's bring this fractionally down here. Maybe increase the intensity to, let's say, 30,000. Yeah, I think now it looks a little bit better. I'm going to move this thing just about there, or maybe somewhere around here, perhaps. I'm going to move this somewhere around here, and yeah, I think now it looks good. You can now see the difference as well. Let me enlarge this window. And this is what it looks like before the rectangular light. And this is what it looks like after the rectangular light. Okay. I'm going to split this window and yeah, I think it looks pretty good. Perhaps I should just maybe fractionally bring this thing down just about there, perhaps. Yeah, I think it looks pretty good. Okay. So I'm going to save everything. Let's now bring in our spotlight. Let me enlarge this window and let's bring in a spotlight into the scene. I'm going to bring this thing here. And as you can see, this is what a spotlight actually looks like. Let me change the orientation to global. And let me increase the intensity as well. Let's increase this to 500. Okay. And as you can see, we have this cone radius as well. You can control the outer cone angle and the inner cone angle by using these sliders. I can also adjust the inner cone angle as well. Okay. So pretty self-explanatory. I'm gonna reset these two in here, and I'm gonna use this spotlight maybe just about there for this asset. Maybe bring it somewhere around here and bring this up on Z. I'm gonna change the orientation to local, or maybe global was fine. Perhaps just about there. And I think I should decrease the cone angle maybe somewhere around here. I'm not really sure, but let's see how this looks like in our shot. Interesting. I'm just gonna select this window and press G to enable the game mode. Let's see. I think I'm gonna increase the cone angle and maybe bring the intensity up to 3000. I'm not really sure about this one, but let's give it a try and see if it works. I think the point light will be a better option in here. So let's delete this, and I'm gonna delete this one as well. Uh, and let's bring in a point light. I'm gonna move this thing up on Z. Bring it just about there. And let's increase the intensity, maybe to maybe just about there. Yeah, I think the point light is doing a very good job in here. So let's duplicate this point light and I'll bring it just about there. Maybe somewhere around here. Just about there. And oops, I'm gonna duplicate another point light. And maybe bring it just about there. Okay. Yeah, I think now it looks a little bit better. We can also change the color as well. Maybe let's say if I select all of them, let's change this to maybe red. I'm gonna press OK. And let's see how this thing looks like in our shot. Yeah, I think it looks pretty good. Okay. Perhaps I should remove these two lights from here. I'm not really sure about that, but let's see what happens if we hide them. Yeah, I think it looks pretty good. Yeah, I think one light is more than enough in here. Okay. Yeah, as you can see, it looks pretty good at the moment. I'm gonna save everything. So this is how you can use the artificial lights of Unreal Engine to light up different areas, very specific areas such as different assets, the interior of different assets, or maybe place some lights around the assets. So this is the end of today's lesson, and in the next lesson we'll discuss some more, we'll have some more discussion about lighting. So I'll see you guys in the next one.